So this guy that we invited tonight has sold 6 million books all over the place. His books have been translated to over 30 languages. And one of his books will become a movie very, very soon. I hope he will share a little bit about that later on. And Überraschung im Café am Rande der Welt, Part 4 of his successful book, will be published in German on May 17th. So I'm talking about John Strelecky, the US-American bestselling author, and here he is. Hi, John. We're so amazed. Everyone is so excited to have you here tonight.
Well, I'm excited to be here. It's so great to see you again. I loved our interview that we did before and looking forward to this. Looking forward to seeing you in June. We've got a lot of times that we're going to connect, Stella.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we kick it off, just once again, questions are welcome in the chat. So whenever we have a conversation here going on between John and me, and you feel like, oh, I want to jump in, I have a really, really urgent question, please share it with me in the chat. I will always keep an eye on the chat and pass your question on to John. And as mentioned, there are no no-goes tonight. You can ask whatever you want. And let's start with something fresh out there. Ladies and gentlemen out there, let me ask you first, before I chat with John, I want to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, what do you like especially about John Strelecky? Is it his hat or is it his books? Which one of the books? Is it a specific sentence you really love and like? Please share it with me in the chat. I'm very keen to see what you are sharing with us. Claudia is stating Museum of Life. Christina Schneider, same. It's called Museumstage. And the hat, she says. Definitely the hat. Alice is saying John's fantasy. Okay, we will dive into that later. Caroline says his positive attitude. Krista says Meeresschildkröten. I'm so sorry, I don't know the exact word for that in English. We will work on that later on. Angela says every day is a museum day. Gabriele, I like the message of the book a lot, just in general. The big five for life, so powerful. And the question that you are adding to your stories, because they are thought-provoking, says Anya in the chat. Claudia states your optimistic view. Then we have another favorite, which is Big Five for Life. The turtles swimming in the sea. The sea turtles, Meeresschildkröte. Yeah, sea turtles, here we are with the amazing smile. Bertha says your amazing smile, John. Uh-oh, it gets flirty.
I think she's talking about your style.
No. It's all about you, John. This time it's all about you. No, most of them are ladies. So, and they do know me since 15 years. So I'm not the new face here in the room, you see? So obviously people are still sharing what they like about you. So it's a lot. You're a likable person.
I'm honored. I'm honored. You know, ever since this journey began, it's been one of those things where I am humbled, constantly humbled by people's reaction to the stories and the beautiful letters and messages that they kindly send to our teams, whether it's via social media or email. And it so validates everything that we do. And that's, you know, you and I were talking a bit offline, my excitement about coming to Europe again. And one of the reasons that I'm so excited is because I love the chance to interact with fans and to hear their stories and to hear how they've progressed they'll tell me this is where I was and I was kind of struggling. And then I read something in Das Café am Rande der Welt, and it gave me hope, or it gave me courage, or it gave me inspiration. And then now here's where I've taken my life. And those are the kind of things to get my heart pumping in a wonderful way.
Absolutely. And how many love letters do you receive? Because I'm still having an eye on the chat. And Ilona mentions the sparkle in John's eyes. Oh my goodness.
I'm so happy that you actually mentioned that, because so many times people say to me, one of my big five for life, or one of the things when I ask myself the question from Das Café am Rande der Welt, why am I here? And part of what people say is, I want to be in a loving relationship. And they often ask me, so what do you recommend? And my recommendation is always the same, which is do something that makes you sparkle. It's, we have this perception that, well, I'm in this job that I don't like, and I'm there for 40 hours a week, but I'm hoping that someone will see through the unhappiness and see who I really am inside, and they'll recognize the beauty that is me, and then they'll sweep me off my feet, and away we'll go to have this amazing life. And that's awesome if it happens that way, but you can make it a lot easier for people by putting yourself in a position where you sparkle, you genuinely smile because you love what you're doing, you love the way you're spending your time, and that enables other people to see you in this wonderful light, and then they're attracted to you. And so that would be one of my greatest, I wish I had known that when I was so much younger, that allow yourself to shine in your greatest lights, and then other people will be drawn to you.
Absolutely. But it was so fascinating. I mean, I had your book, I think your book was sitting in my bookshelf for years and years, and I didn't touch it. I knew it was there. And all of a sudden, I think it was between Christmas and New Year's Eve 3 years ago. So before the pandemic started, I kind of, it called me, it found me. And it's so fascinating when you think about stories find you and books find you, people find you.
Yeah.
How do you think about, how you feel about that?
It's fascinating. I definitely am of the belief that everything has an energy and everything has a vibration. And so sometimes it's not the right time for a particular message. And so then all of a sudden we get the inclination that it is the time. I can't tell you how many instances people have shared with me that they've been walking through the bookstore and the book falls off the shelf in front of them. If it was just like one time I heard that, I'd be like, oh, that was just a random coincidence. But I've heard this so often. And so it does make me wonder exactly what's going on in the cosmic algorithm of the universe. And the more open we are to that, then the more open we are to, this is the right time for this particular message in my life. And why? Well, we'll discover it when we start reading it or watching that movie or having that conversation. Have you ever had that, Stella, where you see someone and you're like, I don't even know this person, but for some reason, there's like a reason I'm supposed to talk to them. And whenever I've been courageous in those moments and walk up and just say, listen, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I just felt like there was something I was supposed to talk to you about today. Like, what's your story? It's amazing the connections that you form in that. And so I think that's part of the cosmic algorithm of the universe, saying your frequency and their frequency are connected somehow.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're all connected somehow. I mean, this pandemic showed it very clearly to us that we are connected over our breath and through the air. And this should have been a very nice example that we could take as a learning for our universal or global understanding of this world, that we are all somehow connected.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And we have technological examples of this, and I'm trying to think of a good one where, well, like radar, for example, is a good example. So that's a technology that we sort of understand, and it tells us when things are in our periphery. I believe that we are all gifted with these sort of internal guidance systems, and you can call it intuition. You can call it, again, the cosmic algorithm of the universe, but these things are within our periphery. We have these capacities. The trick is to just turn it on. And then once you turn it on, I mean, let me ask you, because I know that you have such a wide breadth of experience in business and in life. Have you ever had a moment where your intuition was telling you, this is where I need to be moving today, even if it logically didn't quite make sense,
I mean, that's why I started my business 15 years ago in the first place. I had this gut feeling that I had to do something like Ladies Drive, because my opinion back then was that my female view on business, the female angle, is totally kind of ghosted in the medias. And I wanted to change that and create a platform where women can meet each other from all kinds of generation, all kinds of industry, come together, share wisdom, and empower each other, make each other bigger, better, faster together, kind of. And that's why I started in the first place. And everyone was like, are you crazy? A community right. For women, business women. I mean, there are so few. For who are you doing that? And I was like, there are a lot. I mean, there must be more than just me.
Yeah, well, and that's a perfect example of the way in which I also look at things. And that when I'm writing, I think to myself, if I write something that makes me laugh, it'll make someone else laugh. If I write something that makes me cry, it'll make someone else cry. And so never underestimate that you are a wonderful proxy for what someone else may be going through. So yeah, if you as a business owner were saying, wow, it would be awesome if this existed, there's probably other business owners saying that same thing. The question is simply who's going to be the one to facilitate it, who's going to be the one to build the platform. And so that's awesome. I mean, you took that leap. And so one of the things I often get asked, so let me ask you for your specific example, is where do you find the courage in that moment to take the step? And so here your intuition was saying to you, this is a good idea, or you should think about this, Stella. How did you go from that thought to actually building the entity, the company?
It kind of fell into my laps, but not literally. So it was there. I had this kind of intuition, and I knew it should be a print magazine, but it must be a quarterly. I will want to have these webinars online. I want to have meetings offline. I want to have business clubs. And I shared that to my husband, and he was like, okay, where does that come from? And I said, I have no clue. It's just there. But I think sometimes when you write a book, it might have been the same for you as an experience, because sometimes you're just 100%. Kissed by the muse, something like that. And you don't know where that comes from, where these beautiful sentences and all these ideas you write down come from. Was it the same for you?
100%. And so I'll share a story with you, and then I'll share it though in the context of anyone who's out there thinking about starting a business or taking a leap into the unknown in some aspect of their life. So when I get called to write a book, because I don't write on demand, I only write when I feel like there's a story that really wants to be told. And so when I have that sense, I have that feeling, I will start to record my ideas in a file, and I'll just keep a document on my laptop. And then I'll keep a notepad by my nightstand, because I often find when I wake up first thing in the morning, I'll have a good idea. Or even more so for me is right before I go to bed. Like I'll try and go to bed, and then I'll have this idea. I turn on the light, write it down, and then finish writing it down. I turn off the light, put my head back in the pillow. Oh, there's another idea. I got to turn the light back on. But this is all sort of like your channel is wide open in that moment. And this is really good stuff. You don't want to miss out on this, because there's been times when I thought, oh, I'll remember that in the morning. Oh no, it's like
it's gone.
when the channel is open and the universe is gifting it to you, that is the time to write it down. So I capture all of these notes, and then I store them in a document on my computer, and I'll do this for months. And again, I think this would be a wonderful thing to do, whether you're starting a business, or in my case, writing a story, working on a movie. And then when I feel like, okay, now is the time to really start the process of writing, I'll go back through and I'll read all of my 2 months worth of stories and content and idea. And then it just intuitively feels like, okay, and now we begin. And then I set a goal for myself too. So I say 10 pages a day. And I know before I begin about what I want the book to be page wise. And then I say, okay, 10 pages a day. So if it's going to be a 250-page book, that's 25 days of writing. And that feels very manageable to me. And I've done the same thing with businesses, where I say, okay, so this is what I'm trying to create. And about how much time do I think I can spend on it every day? So, okay, I should have a business launched in X number of days. Because to me, so many people have said, I'd love to write a book. I said, well, how's it going? Well, they haven't really started yet, or they're not making progress. And I get that. It's because it feels so big. Mm-hmm. But if you just break it down into 10 pages a day, then anyone can write a book.
So the baby steps are the thing.
Yeah. Because I think two things happen. One is you feel like, okay, I have a goal, so that's good. The other thing I do is I say, so when I'm committed to the project, I don't do anything before I write my 10 pages. So I get up, I take a shower, brush my teeth, and then I write. So I don't check my email. I don't check my phone because all of that is just a distraction.
Right.
Oh, I don't know about you, but if I open my inbox and start checking email, an hour goes by like that. So the last thing I want to be doing is getting distracted. So yes, that's my primary focus. And when the 10 pages are done, you're like, wow, I'm 1/25th of the way there. Like you feel really good about yourself. You're making good progress, you know? And to your point, I can't tell you the number of times, especially in this new book, that I would be sitting in a park writing and words would be coming through me. And I just sort of stop and I'm like, wow, I don't know where that came from, but that definitely was not inside here 5 seconds ago. It's tapping into something else.
Mm-hmm. We have some interesting questions already in the chat, if you allow me to
Absolutely.
read it to you. So we have, let's start with Laura's question. How close to reality are the books from your personal experiences? How much John Strelecky is in the book?
Yeah, very much so.
Does an author need to do that in order to be real?
I don't know. I think that I could write pretty much anything if I get myself in the right headspace. I mean, this book, the fourth book in the Cafe series, is the character of John is not in this book. This is the story of a 15-year-old young woman named Hannah. And we met her briefly in book 3. And then this book is all about her and her story. And so for me, that was entering into that world. But it's so interesting when I enter that world, Stella, I find that I am watching the scenes take place and writing the dialogue as fast as I can because I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it, and I'm just trying to capture it. Even more so than the concept of like creating it. It's not really me creating it. It's me being the conduit for what's already going on. So yeah, did I answer the question? I got lost in my answer there.
No, absolutely. We get it that there is a lot of John really in the book, at least in the first 1 or 2.
Yeah, well, so I'll give you a perfect example. In the second book in the Cafe series, there's a really beautiful story that Mike shares about him and his daughter. And that story is 100% based on an experience that I had with my daughter. We were on a trip backpacking around the world, and she had been such an incredible trooper. I mean, we had been on the road for months and months and months, and no matter how long the flights were, no matter how long the drives were, she was just always in a good mood, always happy. And then we were in this campground in Australia. We were sleeping in this little camper van. It was cold. Australia has tons of venomous snakes and spiders, so you got to worry about what you're going to encounter. And it's 2 a.m. She's got to go to the bathroom. She's cranky. I'm cranky. We're trying to find our shoes. We leave the van and we finally get to the bathroom and she just starts crying uncontrollably. And this is so not like her, you know, and she's just crying and crying and crying. And so I tell this story, this beautiful moment that happened between us and how she taught me something so powerful. And again, that is entirely based on this real experience that I have had with her in Australia. And then I just incorporated into the story as the character of Mike talking about it with his experience with his daughter. So, yeah.
We had this question quite often in the chat. So obviously people are very interested if there are parallels between the true and real life of John Strelecky and the books, right?
Yeah. So, no, and also, so people often read Safari des Lebens to ask me about that. So that story is entirely set in Africa, and I could not have written that story had I not spent a lot of time in Africa. And Africa changed my life dramatically, and that's what I think opened up that channel to write that particular story.
Mm-hmm. You have a very, very nice, it's not really a question, more of a comment or analysis in the chat from Krista. She says, I am reading the book for the 3rd time, and now I am at another point of or in my process. It is still interesting or much more inspiring even. So I just wanted to pass it on to you because I think it's an interesting observation because it's a lot. For instance, I read The Little Prince of Saint-Exupéry once in a while, every 2 or 3 years, since, I don't know, 20 years. And every time I was like, has that always been in the book? Like, flipping back the pages, I was like, I never read that, or I never understood the words. I read the words, but I didn't get it. And all
Isn't
of a
that
sudden,
amazing? Yeah. As we change, the words have different meaning for us. You know, so the third book in the cafe series is about dealing with aging. And I fully expect that someone who is 25, 28 is going to read that book and have a particular reaction to it. Like I remember one young lady saying, I understood my father much more after reading that book.
that's cute.
But that same person, so now they're 25, 28, trust me, when they're 50 and they read that book, it's going to seem like there's all kinds of different words in there, which there aren't, but there's things that are going to connect with you in a way that will only make sense when you're 50, you know? So yeah, I do the same thing. I have a couple of books that I reread very often, once every year, once every 2 years. And I do the same thing. I'm always like, didn't catch that part before in there.
What's the book you're reading once in a while?
So I'll give you an example of one. It's called Illusions by an author named Richard Bach. And that was when I first wrote Das Café am Rande der Welt. And I wanted to turn it into a book. I literally took out a ruling stick and I measured Illusions. And I said, the book is 4¼ inches wide by 7¼ inches tall. So my book is going to be exactly that size, because I love that book so much. And that's actually another great like life learning that I've had. If you're starting a business and you're trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B, look at someone who's already gotten from point A to point B in a business that you admire and just imitate the steps they took. In the same way that I imitated this little book by measuring it, if you do that, no matter what your dream is, that will launch you so much faster in your endeavors. So it's okay that someone else has already had success. That's a good thing. You want to imitate that success.
Absolutely. And take others as a role model.
Yeah.
Get the inspiration from, right?
Totally. Same with book writing. If someone is listening to this and they say, well, I want to write a book and I'm not sure what kind, write down your 5 favorite books and write down why you like them so much. And you'll notice a pattern. Maybe they're all fiction. Maybe they're all nonfiction. Look at how long the chapters are in each of those 5 books. And I bet you'll find a pattern. I bet they're all really long chapters. They're all really short chapters. You know, look at how long the books are. You'll probably find a pattern. Oh, those are quick reads. I like those. Well, that's a really good indication. So if that's the kind of stuff you like to read, that's probably the kind of stuff you should write too.
Absolutely. So we have some questions about how to write a book as well. I think that covers it quite in an amazing way. Thank you so much for that. We have another very nice question from Nicole in the chat. I read it out to you. She says, the fact that a book can be life-changing or eye-opening is true, and everybody of us has probably already experienced it. How is this possible? What do you think about it? It's so simple, but still so fascinating.
Yeah. So I think that each of us has, we're going through the process of discovering what we want to do with our life and then living out that dream. Or we're putting it to the side and suffering the consequences, one of the two. And I've been on both sides of that equation many different times in my life. I do my best these days to stay on the side where I'm actually defining my dream and then living my dream. I think that in the process of either one, we're learning things. I think we learn a lot faster when they're on the side of living our dreams. And I believe that all of that adds to what I call the collective consciousness. And so the minute I learn something, and it enters the collective consciousness, you, Stella, have access to that. And the same in reverse. The minute you learn something in Zurich, Switzerland, we don't need to text each other and call each other and be like, oh my gosh, here's the thing I learned today. But I do believe it sort of enters the ether. And if you think of it like a giant database, a giant version of Google, then the minute it enters the ether, then I, as a human being, a fellow human being, have access to that awareness, access to that knowledge, access to that learning. And so a book is just another vehicle, another conduit towards that. I take something that comes through me and I put it onto a page. And now someone else in 43 languages around the world can open that same page and read that story, and in their own language, in their own culture, can find their own source of inspiration from that. And that is awesome. I mean, we've never lived at a time in human history where that was as available as it is now. You can be inspired by someone in Bangladesh. You can be inspired by someone in Thailand. You can be inspired by someone in South Africa. And I mean, there's been no better time to live an extraordinary life than now, because the resources that are available, just unprecedented.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely with you. And it's I mean, it's what they call Brahman as well, this universal consciousness where we are
Yeah.
all connected. It comes
Yeah.
back to what we spoke about in the beginning. But we have a very nice question from Simone in the chat, and I like to pass that on to you too. She asked first, how came the book to my bookshelf in the first place? Simone, I have no clue. I have no clue if I bought it by accident, if it was a gift, it sneaked in. I have no clue. That's the fascinating thing, but it's what you just mentioned, John, like people going through a library and the book falls out from the shelf in front of their feet, and you pick it up and say like, oh, it found me. I think that was the same thing. And her second question is, since you, John, have that much success in the German market, a German director is realizing your movie, how is your experience in understanding and talking German? To be honest, we already practiced a little bit Überraschung.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I wish that I could say that I was moving faster in my fluency. The preparation for the tour. So we launched May 17th on the tour where we're going to be traveling around Germany and Switzerland to celebrate the release of the fourth book. And so I have to say the last 4 months have been rather intense, and they're continuing to be very intense as we're leading up to this. So my time spent practicing hasn't been as much as I want, but the good news is that I will be there for 21 days. And so I'll be immersing myself in the beautiful German language and having a chance to practice every single day with everyone.
And to be honest, John, if we say now people can apply to be your German teacher, I think the ladies will put you off in front of your tour bus. But we will talk about that like in a minute.
Nice. So I want to jump back to something that you just mentioned, which was really, really cool. You were talking about how you're not sure the way that the book got into your bookshelf, right? And I've had those same types of things, Stella, where something happens and I'm not even sure I could connect the dots to figure out how it all happened. But if we ask ourselves, are we open to the book finding me? Are we open to that random conversation in a cafe somewhere where the person sees me working on my business plan and says, oh, what are you building? Because if we don't allow ourselves to be open to that moment, the chances of our succeeding in the way that we want to succeed, whether it's our business, whether it is an adventure that we want to go on, the chances of that succeeding get shrunk very fast and very far. And I want to bring that up because this is something that I struggled with for a long time in my life, of being open to the fact that I was worthy enough to receive help from someone else, that I was worthy enough to have something to offer. And so let me share with everybody who's listening the phrase that came to me that I do my best to absorb every single day. The question is not, who am I to stand on a stage? Who am I to build the business? The question is not, who am I to? The question is, who am I not to? Right? Someone is living your dream life. Someone is building your dream business. Someone is going on your dream adventure. It might as well be you. You are 100% worthy of that.
Sometimes you have to flip the side of the stairs, right? To flip the coin. And
I think this is
side of it.
I think this is one of the great challenges. Again, in Safari des Lebens, I talk about maybe the way life works is that when we arrive in the human form, just prior to that, we are a spirit, a soul, whatever, and we look on this big board of challenges and we pick the ones we want to take. And I think one of the ones that a lot of us have picked is struggle with my self-esteem, struggle that I'm worthy. And so then you arrive in your human form, and sure enough, at some point, someone says something to you, well, you're not good at that. Or, well, that's not what we do. We're not that kind of person. And one of the great struggles in life is to accept that you are capable of going on any adventure you want to go on. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of building a beautiful business and having people love what you create. That is part of the human experience. And one of those challenges is that. And when you overcome that, man, oh man, does the world get fun and interesting.
I struggled a lot with like this being enough. So I did a lot. I learned a lot. I worked a lot. I was committed to everything I did. I did everything with a lot of passion, but I still felt there was this lack of something. Something is missing.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough. I'm good, but
Mm-hmm.
not good enough. And like this realizing that it's okay. It's good enough. You're good enough.
Yeah.
You're doing enough. That gave me so much comfort, and it all of a sudden felt so easy.
Yeah. Was there a defining moment? Was there a defining person? How did you cross that bridge?
I think a lot of that work was the work of my husband. So because he said, you do so many things, it's enough. And just hearing someone you love and you respect saying that, this opened a whole new world for me. Really, it sounds so silly if I say it now, but like we're together since 23 years. It's the time when we met. That was really, I struggled a lot with that.
Yeah, well, so some great points in what you just said. First of all, that goes back to are we open to receiving that? Because someone can say it to us, but we dismiss it. And, you were receptive to it. You thought, well, wait, let me think about that. Am I doing enough? Is that okay? And then I think that is a wonderful question to ask. People were talking about in the chat, you were asking about museum day. And to me, that's it. That's, if everything that I'm doing builds beautiful parts of my museum, am I good? Like maybe I can scale it back a little bit. Maybe I can relax a little bit, not be so worried all the time about stuff. And so, yeah, that's beautiful. And what else you prompted in that is, remember, for everyone who's listening and watching this, that we can be that same voice for somebody else. And so just like we're struggling at times, our friends, our family, other people we care about are struggling too. And sometimes it's up to us to play that supportive role and say, actually, you're good. And let them know that.
Thank you so much for that, John. And I would love to pass on some more questions to you that have been shared with us in the chat. For instance, the question from Lily, I quote, speaking of energy in the universe, John, what is your personal belief of what happens once we leave our body, aka die?
Yeah, I've given this a lot of thought. And bizarrely enough, I won't spoil it, but it's actually in the fourth book, the Cafe series.
No spoilers today.
I won't spoil it, but I will say that the reason I included it is because it is something that I've thought about a lot. And so I will tell you my assessment of it, or my final answer, but I'll leave the details of it to be told in the context of the story. But I've interacted with some really fascinating people. I've had the pleasure of, including a gentleman who wrote a book called Hello from Heaven, which was a compilation of interviews that they did with people from around the world, completely different cultures, completely different backgrounds, of people who had experiences with someone who had passed away. And this was a bunch of years ago. And that really opened my eyes to that this wasn't a cultural thing, that maybe there was something that transitioned beyond. And that sort of opened up the Pandora's box for me in a good sort of way of asking this question. I'll tell you where I'm at now with it to answer this person's question. I believe that we are something before we're born. I think that you enter the human form as a game. It's just a chance to learn. It's a chance to grow. It's a chance to contribute to the collective consciousness that we talked about before. You can't really fail because it is a game. There are all kinds of angels all around you. And I'll come back to that in a second, and I'll give you an example. And that when this human experience is over, that you leave your physical form and you go back to whatever you were before this, whether that is spirit, whether that's energy, I don't know for sure. But I do believe that then you probably do another round or two. Like my guess is it's not just a one-time experience, and that each time you go through it, you learn a little bit more and you learn a little bit more. But part of what gives me the belief that this is true is what I was asking you before is, have you ever met someone that you didn't even know them, and yet you like, it was like almost like a magnetic attraction when you walked by the person? And I'm not saying it in a like physical way, like, oh, I'm going to go date this person. But there was just like your radar was saying like, this person and I have met before, or we're supposed to meet now, or there's a reason that our lives are intersecting. And I think that that's part of this whole game too. That maybe you and this other soul made an agreement before you both entered the human form, and you're like, all right, so watch out for me because I'm going to be in Zurich and you're going to be in Orlando. And if you're open to it, at some point, your paths are going to cross, maybe just for a millisecond of time. But in that millisecond of time, you're going to recognize another soul. And if you're willing to sit down and have a conversation, your lives will both be enhanced. You'll both grow. So that's what I think happens. I think that's the way this whole experience works. I could be totally wrong, but at least for me at this moment, it's what feels right to me. And I'll tell you the example of the angels. So I don't know why, but whenever I'm having a personal pity party, I'm working on a project and it's not going the way I want it to, or a contract didn't close that was supposed to close, or something, right? It is amazing how I run into someone or see someone who shifts my state like that. And so I remember this so distinctly. I was driving down the highway one time, or leading up to the highway. I was all annoyed. My day was going wrong. And I'm pulling up to the entrance ramp to the highway. And I look and I see, and this is like in the middle of nowhere. Like so I see a guy walking down the highway entrance ramp towards me where I'm going to turn onto. And Stella, like, there's nowhere this guy could be walking from. Like, that highway goes for 30 kilometers before the next exit. I have no idea how someone would even get up there, right? And so I see this man walking towards my car, and I realize that he only has one arm. And in that instant, I was so embarrassed at my own, like, oh, these are the things that are bothering me. Like, this guy has one arm. So many of the things I love to do in my life, including at that time, my daughter was very young, picking up and throwing her up in the air and catching her. Like, I wouldn't be able to do if I was struggling as this poor man is struggling with his reality. And so this awareness hit me, and I looked at him, and then the light went green and I had to go, and I started pulling up. And as I started pulling up onto the entrance ramp, I looked in my rearview mirror and he was gone. And there was no way that he could have walked to a place where I couldn't see him, you know? And so that's what I mean. Like, if you're open to it in these moments of frustration or hesitation or uncertainty, open your field of vision, and don't be surprised if you see someone in human form that is manifesting a reality that will remind you to be grateful, to be courageous, to be whatever you need at that moment.
What a wonderful answer to that fascinating question. So thank you, John, and thank you, Lily, for asking John and giving him such a great opportunity to share all that with us. Thank you so much. Just speaking of intuition, Anya wants to know, how do you not let your head talk you out of your intuition? I like that one.
Yeah, this comes with practice. So the more times I have ignored my intuition and then paid the price for it, the more times I've learned to trust it. I'm an avid athlete, so in part this has been honed because I play sports. And so, as an example, when I play beach volleyball, and I will know that this is what's going to happen before it happens. If I ignore that, then I pay the price. I lose the point. But if I trust it and I see, oh, this is like 100% of the time, then you're like, well, why wouldn't I do it? You know, it'd be like picking up your phone and you know that you're supposed to hit the green button to make a call, but you keep pushing some other button and it's not working, but you keep pushing the other buttons anyway. Like, at some point, you're just like, okay, the green button is the one to push. Trusting your intuition is the same thing. Let me ask you a question, Stella, in the context of that. Have you ever had the thought, I'm forgetting something?
All the time, 24/7.
There you go. So you're about to walk out the door. Your intuition kicks off, I'm forgetting something. If you ignore it, so this is the person's question. If you ignore it, you use the logical brain, no, I'm not, and you walk out the door, what typically happens about 5 minutes later?
You have an accident, or you remember that you definitely forgot something, and you push back and drive back home, pick it up, and whatever, etc.
Yeah, exactly, right? You override it, and you're 5 minutes down the road, and then you're like, and then you got to drive back. right?
Yeah.
So what's amazing with our intuition is it's like a muscle. And so if you allow yourself in that moment of I'm forgetting something to embrace the feeling, and I say this completely from having spent many times being 5 minutes down the road and having to turn around and come back. If you say to yourself, okay, what am I forgetting? And you just sit in that space for a couple of minutes, you'll get it. All right. And the more you build this muscle, then it doesn't hit you before you're going to walk out the door. Literally the night before, your intuition will be like, remember this. It becomes this very fluid interaction. And again, the more you open that channel, the more you trust the channel, the easier it becomes to not override it with the sort of brain logical piece.
The thing is,
I'm glad, by the way, that I am not the only one who has done that. It's nice to hear that someone else has driven 5 minutes down the road and turned around.
True, but it's so true what you're saying regarding this override. Because if you override your conscious thoughts about the unconscious, you will be stuck somewhere at some place. And if you start to kind of lift that up and say, okay, I'm listening. Okay, I'm here. I'm watching. I'm listening. The universe will tell you.
Yeah.
They'll share what you need to know with you.
What percentage of your business decisions do you make intuitively? What percentage do you make sort of logically, and how do you balance the two?
I'm not the logic person. So I can pretend maybe 98% of my business decisions are from the gut feeling, or just a desire of my inner voice or my heart, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
So, and I have learned to follow that and to listen, to watch, to carefully kind of, just make sure that I don't miss anything. And that my reason, my brain doesn't interfere.
Okay.
So my heart has room to talk to me.
That's,
to put it that way.
So for the person who is asking the question, because we talked earlier in this conversation about finding examples. And so if you're thinking about, is it okay to trust my intuition to do most of my business decision making? Well, Stella is a perfect example of someone who is very successful because they do that. And so if you're sitting on the sidelines asking yourself, is that okay? Then the answer is 100% yes. And that's what I love, because somebody may decide that they're more 50-50 or 70-30, because that's, each of us is going to decide that for ourselves. But Stella is a perfect example, as you just heard her say, of like, this is the way that I do it and it works. And that's why you keep doing it, I'm sure.
Sure. I mean, once you realize it can be an asset for you in business, it works, it is successful, you don't stop doing it, right? But you need to have this first positive experience with that new way kind of thinking and embracing the world.
Yeah. So here's a way you can test that, by the way, or not test it, but here's a way you can help train your brain on getting comfortable with your intuition, by the way. I did this with a friend of mine one time. We were in Amsterdam and she was worried that she wouldn't be able to figure out how to get from one point to another. And so I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I said, I know where we're going and I have my phone. So I'll have it on my phone, but you just use your instincts and I said, so we're starting here. Should we go straight, left, or right? And we spent about 20 minutes in just using her instincts. She got us exactly where we wanted to go. And it was such a big aha moment for her and such a good validation for me, because I get very used to using my phone for my map stuff. Mm-hmm. That no, within us is actually a very interesting guidance system. And so little things like that can help open up that channel. You know, drop yourself in a place and just wander for a while and trust your instincts and see where you get to. Because it's very easy to sort of use these things and get very attached to them. Mm-hmm. And I think in some cases, they actually close off that intuitive channel.
But the thing is, if you do that and you think, okay, now I'm bold, today I'm bold, I try to do what John's told me and I follow his lead now, and you're running in circles, don't be worried. That should be. It's exactly where you should be at that moment. If you run in circles, don't worry at all. It's just how it should be. I think
that might be just part of the learning. Listen, one of my favorite aha moments in my life is that every expert started off knowing nothing about what they became an expert in. And so if you're in the process of building your intuitive channel and opening that channel as wide as possible, then yeah, don't be surprised if you do a couple of turns around the block now and again. That's okay. That's just you building up that muscle, building up that strength.
Absolutely. And we have some more, we have 26 new messages in the chat. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I try to take care of everything, but we still have kind of 50 minutes left. So just in case, to our dear audience, just in case we do not cover all the questions, I'm happy to pass the questions that are not being covered on to John, and we will try to send you all the answers later on via email.
We'll do another interview.
Or we do a second one.
Second round of discussion.
5.0. Why not? I mean, you wrote quite a number of books. We have enough to talk about. But Alexandra wants to know, John, you were consultant first. Did you imitate someone to become a writer, or how did you find your purpose in the first place?
Yeah, my path to starting the writing experience was totally different in that I left everything behind when I was 32. A very successful career that I didn't love, but I was good at, and went to go backpack around the world. And that was a huge leap of faith. I didn't know anyone who had ever done anything like that. Most people said, you're crazy. Kind of like what you were saying about starting your business. I was laughing as you were saying those words because I heard a lot of that in my life, starting with when I decided to go backpack around the world. And I just wanted to go do it because I was worried that if I didn't do it, I would never do it. And so I went to go backpack around the world. Again, a lot of people do that when they're younger and everybody thinks that's okay. But when by the time you're 30 plus, like people start to worry about you when you do something. He's having a midlife crisis. But to me, I just wanted to go out there and experience what called my heart the most. And being an adventurer was part of that. And seeing the world was a part of that. Well, after a year of doing that, I came back and Das Café am Rande der Welt flowed through me over the course of 21 days. I did not have a particular background in that. I didn't have a dream of that. So in some respects, just like the book falling off the shelf in front of us, the story fell off the shelf in front of me and said, we would greatly appreciate it if you would be the shepherd for this story. And it's an honor that I hold so deep in my heart today, because I don't know why I get to be the shepherd for the cafe, but it's something that is so near and dear to my heart. Every time I start the second book as an example of that, every time I start reading the second book in the cafe series, I feel this tremendous sense of coming home. It is just, it's cellular. I can't even do it justice in describing it. And so, yeah, for some reason, the cafe and I have gotten a chance to be intertwined, but it wasn't something that I necessarily chose. And the reason I say that is because I don't think you can know what the second great adventure is until you go on the first great adventure. And so for me, the life was saying, okay, you say that you want to go out there and go travel the world and experience all these things. So go do that. And then when I did that, that's when the channel opened up where the story of the cafe could flow through me. So had I have not gone and backpacked around the world, would I be having this conversation with you? I don't think so. I don't think so. And so sometimes in life, there's a great big unknown in front of us. And what I would encourage everyone who's watching us to do is when you, like Stella was saying, when you feel that intuitive, this is right for me, take a step into that void with courage, with conviction, trusting your instincts, and step into that unknown. It's okay that you don't know what steps 2 through 100 are going to be. You'll figure that out after you take step 1.
Absolutely. But where would the cafe be if you had a real one? That's a question from Karin in the chat. And I would be interested in that as well.
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting answer that's different for everyone, because I think we all have our own place that is our place, you know? Mm-hmm. As you know, if you've read the different cafe books, the cafe moves. So in the second book, it's in Hawaii. And that's a pretty good spot for the cafe to be. Yeah. Until it needs to be somewhere else.
I would drop by in Hawaii.
Yeah.
To have a coffee with you for sure.
You'll see in this new book that the cafe is in a different place again. And as you read the story, you'll see why. Like there's a reason that it had to move to this other place as it relates to Hannah.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, we have so many questions. I can hardly keep track of them. Apologies for that, my dear ladies and gentlemen out there.
Well, so let's pause, everybody. So we'll get to as many as we can, but keep two things in mind. Keep two things in mind. One is that Stella and I are going to be hanging out in June, and so if it's not already on your life calendar, then you haven't gotten your question answered. Come hang out with us in June. And be a part of that experience, because I'll be hanging out for an entire day plus in Switzerland.
Absolutely. That will be for the League of Leading Ladies Conference in Bad Ragaz, June 16 and 17th. And we have just a couple of tickets left for that before we are fully booked. In case you want to drop by in Bad Ragaz and hang out with John at the pool at the Grand Prix of Bad Ragaz. I mean, what else shall we do in mid of June, right? Then hanging out with John. That would be just fantastic. And a lot of questions are, when are you in Zurich? And what are your plans?
So I will be in Zurich as part of the tour. So that's one of the stops on the tour is Zurich. And so if you check on my social media channels, off the top of my head, I can't remember the date that I'm in Zurich, but it's towards the end of the tour. So I'm guessing like between May 27th and June 1st. And so check online my social media channels and you'll see a link to the tour itself, and you can figure out when I'm in Zurich. And then we're also in another city that is close to a place called Lörrach, which is, I believe, relatively close to Zurich.
Close to Basel?
Okay, yeah. And so if the tickets in Zurich are sold out, then join us in one of the other close locations.
And watch out, the John Strelecky tour bus. I mean, John is going like...
Yes.
Having a real rock star life, to be honest. He will be on the road with a tour bus. Who came up with that idea, John?
Yeah, so that was part of the intuitive channel being wide open. So it's been 2 years because of the pandemic, so we didn't have a chance to interact with fans. I certainly missed seeing everybody and interacting. And so my team and I sat down and said, so what could we do that would be super cool, super fun, super great museum day moment? And so we came up with the idea of a tour bus. And so yes, we will be driving around Germany and then Switzerland in a tour bus themed to the cafe. And we've also created all these cool selfie opportunities. On the back of the bus, there's a beautiful piece of turtle artwork that we had designed. And so there's a great selfie opportunity where you can kneel next to this turtle and get yourself a cool picture. And at the events themselves, I think we've got 6 different selfie stations that we created for people. And the bus itself is going to be a cool selfie opportunity. So yeah, the whole goal was to create something special for cafe fans. And so yeah, find us on tour, join us on tour, and join the party.
And just a quick note, thank you so much, Simone, for sharing your beautiful story about your mother in the chat. I will pass it on to you later on, John. I don't want to go into that now because we don't have enough time, but I'm sure we will talk about that in a second chat with John. So Simone, we won't forget what you just shared with us. Thank you so much. But I would like to pass on 1 or 2 last questions. We still have 5 minutes to go. Gudrun wants to know, do you have a mantra?
I do have a mantra. Yeah, thank you for asking, because this is something that has changed my life a lot. I don't know about you, and I would love to hear your perspective on this, Stella. So I'll share my story, and then I want to hear your take on this. So I would find my mind was very racing and active at my moments of downtime. As an example, you're standing in the store waiting to check out, and my mind would be like, da, 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 right? And then I would be at the stoplights and my mind would be da, 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 da. And for some reason, my mind had a habit of thinking back to a moment from my past that didn't go well. And I would be replaying that moment, but perfecting it. And so it was like a conversation that I didn't do well in, right? And so I'd be perfecting my role in the conversation and trying to do it better. So one day I was at the stoplight and I realized that my brain was doing this. And I thought, this is the biggest waste of minutes of my life I can imagine, because I'm never going to be able to go back in time and have that conversation. And so I thought to myself, what would be a better use of my minutes? And I came up with the idea of using a mantra. And so I came up with a mantra of 5 things, and I repeat each of them 5 times. So now when I pull up to a stoplight, I start immediately defaulting to my mantra. Well, this was so successful in helping me manifest the things in my life that I wanted, that I do it right before I go to sleep. So right before I put my head on the pillow, and I do it very first thing in the morning when I wake up, before I arise out of bed and start the rest of my day. And this is probably one of the most profound things that I've discovered so far. This, in conjunction with like working really hard, is something that will propel you in the direction of whatever success you want in life, whether it's, again, an adventure you want to go on, a business that you want to create. This is part of the cosmic algorithm of the universe that is not taught in school. At least it wasn't in my schools. But man, oh man, is this thing very, very powerful and beneficial. So is it something that you use, Stella? Is it something that you adopted at some point?
What I adapted or brought into my life was this old Hawaiian technique about like saying, forgive me, I'm sorry, thank you, I love you. And I do that before I go to sleep every night. And it just helped me to be at ease with what happened. It helped me to be at ease with my own mistakes. If I treated something not correctly, or sometimes you are just not the best version of yourself. And we all know that it can, you have a lot of pressure, a to-do list, which is too long. You have deadlines and you are under pressure. And this leaves you yourself with not being the very best version of yourself. And I started to do that. Also to really say, forgive me if something pops up from my past that is still triggering me and still haunting me down. I try to release it and saying, I'm so sorry. Okay, yeah. I kind of up, but really forgive me. Thank you for this. And I love you for this. And this really changed a lot for me, just to being thankful before I go to sleep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, when you think about it, we're sleeping for typically 8 or more hours of the day. That is 1/3 of our life. And so the reason I love what you just described and why I love implementing the mantra process and what I do before I go to sleep is that I feel like that is making the best use of my 8 hours while I'm sleeping. It enables me to sleep deeply. Sounds like you too, that enables you to sort of release the tension, release the stress. And that's tied to our health and well-being too. The quality of sleep you get impacts the quality of awake life that you have. So these little practices, although they may sound small, are wonderfully powerful in the impact on the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And thank you, ladies, who just shared with you all the technique. It's called Ho'oponopono. So I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly, but yes, that's it, what I was talking about. Thank you so much. And maybe one last question before we end for today, at least. Dorte wanted to know from you if you have a dark side as well.
Do I have a dark side as well? I would say for me, on the personal front, the dark side is what we were just talking about. So it's reminiscing about moments of failure. That is when my dark side wants to say, you're not worthy, you're not capable, who are you to stand on the stage? And I'm very fortunate in that as I've progressed through the years and gotten better at letting that stuff go, that I don't let that impact me anymore. I think that's part of the human struggle, part of the human experience. Maybe not for everyone, because I can't say what's in everyone else's brain. But certainly for me, it's been part of the story. And, you know, we celebrate the victory when the obstacle was more significant. And so if you're on a soccer field, on a football field, and you have a ball and you have a goal and there's nobody in front of you and you run and you kick and you score, that's awesome, but it's going to get boring after a while. And the way we make the game more interesting, the more we celebrate the victories, we add defenders. And so remember that these things in our life, these are there to help us grow. These are there to help us progress in our own respective journey. And so, yeah, that to me is it's about recognizing it for what it is. And I will tell you that I'll tell you this is a potential dark side that I was able to alleviate. And then we got to go because it's already 1:00. You referenced it a tiny bit, Stella, which is those moments in your life where you've got a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, a lot of tension. Okay. I think having the awareness of what your brain is thinking before we open our mouth and say it out loud is one of the greatest ways to control that sort of dark coding that could be in us because of the way we were raised or whatever. So here's my thought, and I'll close with this. Put a tiny little filter between the brain and the mouth. So right before you say it, think about, what am I going to say? And then open the mouth and say it. This will improve the quality of the life that you have with everybody in your circle, including yourself.
But sometimes when I talk, I hear what I think. So that's, I really have to work on that filter too. And just closing with maybe my view on the dark side. If you have a candle, don't take a lamp to see the candle properly. So light can be seen in the light. Light can be seen in the darkness. And I think this analogy is so beautiful, and it makes so clear that we need both the dark side and the more light side. And both are interconnected, both are combined, and it takes both to experience or have a proper experience in this body of ours. So that's at least how I see it.
I love that. Yeah. And if you're in the midst of the dark, that's true. Shine some light on, or allow the light to come in.
Absolutely. So I'm sure we have enough question to fill another, at least one other hour with having another webinar with you. So let's see how we continue with that, John. I know that we will meet end of May when you're in Zurich, and we will meet again during the League of Leading Ladies conference in Bad Ragaz mid-June, that's for sure. And before we really close, let me give some thanks to our sponsors, Audi Switzerland and DataQuest DQ Solutions, because they supported us. We could offer this chat with John free of charge for you all. And so I really want to say thank you to Audi and DQ Solution for that. It was awesome to spend the last 60 minutes with you. Thank you so much. I see in the chat that people loved it. They're saying thank you. It was so interesting. Yeah, it was just great. I really had a fantastic hour with you. I would love to continue the chat with you. So let's talk about that as soon as possible. Thanks, John Strelecky, and see you in Zurich, and all the best. Best of luck with Überraschung im Café am Rande der Welt.
Thank you so much, Stella. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye, everyone.